Hello and welcome to my second episode of Not Alone, which is my digital journal web series. I don't know what you want to call it at this point. It's more for me, where I discuss about myself and my personal endeavours and what's going on in my life, and to help me through this grievances I'm going through. And I'm sure a lot of you who watched the first episode already know about this. So let's start off with the next one. Before I properly start off with what I'm going to be discussing about, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who watched my previous episode. It was honestly amazing the amount of response I received from it, positive feedback from everyone, honestly, and it means so much that people were saying I helped them, and I couldn't feel any better about me and for them, because it's just amazing knowing that I was doing that. So I want to say thank you to every one of you who watched, and especially to the ones who subscribed and like. You guys are all amazing, and I hold you all to my heart very closely. Anyway, I'm gonna start off with the topic of music today. But before I go into the topic of music, I'm just going to go through an update of what's actually happening in my life and what's happening in terms of just general grievances and so on. So, to start off, it's been nearly 3 weeks since my mother passed away. It'll be 3 weeks tomorrow, because today is Sunday the 7th of June. And so, now being nearly 3 weeks into my grief, I can say a few changes have happened since the last episode. One, I don't feel as numb as I was. I'm not saying I still don't feel any numbness in any way. Don't get me wrong. Sorry, that was my notification. Not that I'm saying I don't feel any numbness in any way, but on the other hand, I am starting to feel other emotions now, like here being a bit angry or a bit of sorrow, and a lot of it tends to overspill. There's been cases now where I just suddenly had a catharsis, and then I out of nowhere start crying, But when you are emotional, that just happens. You can't escape that. It's getting there. It's not too much different to what I was feeling beforehand, as I said, but it's just my numbness is slightly fading away, and my emotions are coming in more so. With terms of funeral stuff, having to sort all that out was a bit of a nuisance in some ways. I understand that everyone needs to do it, but when you're grieving and having to sort out financial stuff, it's difficult, because obviously, like, my college deadline was due in 2 weeks after she died, so I had to focus on that, and then I had to focus on sorting out all the financial stuff, because when she did die, all the benefits were all claimed and got cancelled, and I got a reclaim, and a lot of the benefit system is starting to change around now, so we got to claim for different things, so we're not even too sure where we stand financially to go with it. And then obviously trying to sort out the college work, and then sort out the funeral plans, the cremation plans as a whole is a bit tricky. So when you're trying to juggle all that around, as well as just look after your own well-being to go with it, it's difficult just to grieve as a whole, because you got so much playing on your mind, you can't have space for it. So it is difficult in that sense as well. And it does, there's the days where it might get to me, there's days where I feel okay, and I know I will be okay, but it is really hard, I'm not gonna lie, and it is tough, and I am struggling a bit, and I'm just being open and honest about that, but doesn't mean that I won't get through it either. I know I can, but sometimes there'll be days or moments where I just feel I can't, but either way, that's just how I feel about that. And apart from that, I just released my latest single called Release, which is on my YouTube and SoundCloud now. I've been doing other things musically as well. And I got some other future plans coming up musically, and I'm going to be discussing about my musical life, on what I'm going to be doing and what I'm going to be doing, what I've been doing, how I became a musician and all that. So I'll discuss my personal life in terms of being a musician, but also I will discuss not just about me as a musician and my musical experiences through my life, but also I'm going to be talking about music as a whole, like maybe some academia sides or musicology as a whole, and what music means in philosophy terms maybe. But I'll go into that more as time goes on. But before I fully start to going into the topic of music, I want to have a quick story I want to convey, which is I was watching a anime series called Hunter x Hunter, because I am a anime fan and I watch a bit of anime myself. And for some reason, I don't know if it's because of the emotional state I've been in, but I was watching a episode of Hunter x Hunter, and I got to a scene in it where it got really emotional, to put at least. Like, one of the main antagonists became sort of turned good, if you know what I mean. Antagonist turned evil, turned good guy. Then he ended up like kind of dying with his loved one, a Romeo and Juliet sort of style. But it was really beautifully well done, and I wasn't really expecting it, and I will give it due for that. But for some reason, it made me cry, and I can't tell if it's because the whole thing was done so well that it brought on the catharsis, or because of the emotional situation I was in, it brought it on. Or it could be both. I don't really know, but I did, and one way it really, really helped, because it was the first time since like maybe a day or two after my mum died that I felt proper emotion again. Like I said, I was really numb for a long, long time. And in one way I felt robotic, psychopathic in some ways, and I don't know why, but I did. But at that moment when I had this catharsis and the sadness came out of me and I started crying, it helped, because though I felt pain, and though I felt like shit, but at the same time I was happy I was feeling something. I felt human at last, and I felt like, yeah, pain comes with things, but at the same time it comes with happiness. I rather feel that pain than feel nothing, and it's crazy to think that, but for some reason I felt human again, and it really helped me progress through my grievances after that. Now, I can't say for everyone, but for me, watching something that brings out that purges your emotion like this is really, really good tool for managing your emotions in some way. It helps bring them out, and for you to bring them out and express them, not to anyone specifically, but just to yourself. You're expressing emotions towards yourself and helping you manage them more. So I hope that, anyone listening will take home that sometimes if you feel like you need to let it out, you might have it might be an idea to maybe watch something that brings it out, or it doesn't have to be a film specifically. It could be a book, it can be a video game, even whatever. As long as it's an emotional storyline that brings it out, then go ahead. And I feel like that's a really amazing thing that media has brought us. So, to go from this, I'm going to go into the topic of music and what music means to me and my musical journey. I don't want it to sound too hippie-ish saying that, sorry, but I want to go through it. So I'll start off with what I do, and some of you already might know that I am a guitarist first and foremost, more than any other instrument, but I do also play drums, piano, and bass and all that type of thing. I have played double bass too. I'm not amazing at it, but I do know some things on it. But my main instrument is guitar and always will be guitar. So I started playing guitar when I was 12 years old, back in 2008. So a long time ago now, 12 years ago. And I will tell you the story of how I started guitar before I go into anything else. It's because I personally think it's an interesting story. So I was in school. I was at a school called Cardinal Wiseman at the time, which was a school in Birmingham, because I lived in Birmingham when this. Well, obviously, yeah, I'm going to be living in Birmingham if I'm going to a Birmingham school, of course. Sorry, that's my bad. But anyway, I was going to Cardinal Wiseman at the time, and I was in year 8 when this happened, or year 7. I was in year 7. It was towards the end of year 7 now, I remember. So I remember being in my tutor class, and the music teacher came in and called me out. And I was like, weird, but okay. So he called me out and sent me to the music department. And when I was at the music department, he said he wanted to offer me guitar lessons, which was a bit weird, but okay, can't complain. So how this happened, I think, if I remember correctly, that just before this, I don't know specifically remember how many days, because it was a long time ago, maybe like a week or so. I had a random guitar, not an actual electric guitar, but I had a random bass lesson in my music class, because the bass teacher who was meant to be teaching someone, the student wasn't in at the time. So my music teacher said, does anyone want to do a bass lesson? And the first person to answer was, first 2 people actually to answer would have it. So because I instantly replied, because I really wanted to try it out, I managed to get in. And because the teacher said I had a natural knack for it, I suppose, he wanted to offer me actual guitar lessons. So I was like, gives me something to do, so hell yeah, I'll go for it. And it's free to go with it. So I started off my first guitar lessons, and I did a few of them. And I started off learning my first ever guitar riff, which was Louie Louie. And then I learnt a few other things afterwards, like, Smells Like Teen Spirit, the 12-bar blues, that type of thing, the standard guitar stuff. And then it just kind of spurred on from that, really. And eventually, after having a few lessons, not many, I started basically teaching myself, because I prefer teaching myself than learning from someone else, personally. But, everyone is different in that department. So when that happened, I just carried on from there, really, and I really dedicated myself to it, because at the time, I'm not going to go too much into things at this point, but at the time I had a few issues, and I didn't really have any friends, not many at all. I basically spent that summer holidays from like year 7 to year 8, that sort of summer holidays, I spent about the 2 months essentially completely on my own playing guitar. I didn't see a single person throughout the entire holidays, apart from my mum and dad and my sister, apart from them obviously, but no one else. And I aimed to do 8 hours a day. So I basically, for about 2 months played for 8 hours a day, and I improved my skill more so that way. And I started learning, just basically learning songs and riffs and everything. So it sort of spurred on from there. I played 8 hours a day for a while, and then eventually it kind of slowed down a bit more as school kicked in and everything. And then once I moved to Plymouth, and when I was 13, so about I must have been about just over a year after playing the guitar, maybe a year and a half, where I moved to Plymouth, and I actually started getting friends and going out with people and spending more time actually socializing rather than just being in my house not doing anything. I ended up getting amount. I can't get my words out. Anyway, so I started from that, and to go with it really, from this I just carried on further and further. I started my first band when I was 14, and we were called We've All in Vain, which was just this little school band that of a bunch of school friends were in. And from this I started joining other bands, and my first proper band that I took seriously, I wrote me music for, we actually did gigs and everything, was a band called Blood of the Pure. We were a thrash/death metal band because I was really into thrash metal at the time. So from this essentially came my first band experience, and we were in Blood of the Pure for about, I think the band was around for 2 years, maybe a bit more. I can't remember specifically the length, but we were around for a while. And then when I was about 16, 17, I think, we disbanded. And then I started another band with a other group of friends called another band called Blood or Nothing. And we both voice spoke a bit, and we ended up playing just metal music as a whole. During this gap where between Blood or Nothing and Blood of the Pure, I was in a college band where we would just do covers and stuff, and I spent most of the time on that really between these two things. And obviously once I left college and other people in Blood or Nothing went to different places, and we ended up kind of just disbanding, not in a bad way though. We didn't have nothing bad actually happened between us, just life separated us more, and because you know what life is like. So I ended up not playing for a while for some reason. I'm not going to go too much into this, but my depression and anxiety really kicked in after that, and I didn't really want to play with anyone or play music too much, so I stopped playing for a while. For about 2 or so years, I must have been. Yeah, about 2 years actually. And then eventually, 2 years later, in 2017, when I was 21, I ended up joining a band called Alley Cat Kings, which was a rockabilly band. And that was a big changer for me, through a few things. Obviously, I met new friends. That's obviously a big one. But musically, a big one was playing a different genre, which was, for me, really a big thing, because it kind of helped me push boundaries, because I was kind of put into a spot of I have to learn not only all these new techniques and this new genre, but I had to learn a lot of it in a short amount of time. So I ended up putting myself into a really uncomfortable situation musically, like really far out of my comfort zone, but I kept at it and I did it, and I ended up adapting to it quite well eventually. And I was as a whole, I think it made me a better musician, I'll be honest. Just expanding my knowledge musically and put myself into an uncomfortable zone where I wasn't used to, helped me as a musician heavily. So I think that's a very big thing for any musician to do. Don't limit yourself to just one thing or even just a few things. Have a look into everything. Look into every genre, every technique. I'm not saying you're going to use the entire thing, but you never know what you can find. If you take a little bit from everything and make it your own, you're going to be a much better musician, in my opinion. If you look at a technique, you might go, well, I don't think that's going to work for me, so you just don't do it. So you move on to something else and keep going. But doesn't mean you shouldn't look into it, because you should. You might look into one genre and go, I like that technique, I like this technique, I don't like these ones though. So you throw out the ones you don't want and keep the ones you do want, and just kind of mix them all together and create your own. And that kind of creates your own sound in a way. Just don't limit yourself. Don't be afraid to look into something new, and be open-minded towards everything musically. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but just try it out, because you might find something you never knew you will like, or you never knew was there, and that's amazing. So I got a bit off track there anyway. So I joined the Alley Cat Kings. Was the first time I properly started gigging, really, like on a mass scale, like all over Cornwall and Devon and all that. So it was a big experience for me, and obviously I'm still doing it to this day. Well, since the COVID-19 thing happened, obviously it's been a bit of a standstill for, well, not just for me, but that's for everyone. But I'm still going to this day with that. And then not long after, I started another band called Sixth Degree. We started not long after the Alley Cat Kings, if I remember correctly. It was about a year, maybe, just over the year after that started. And then around about the same time I started that band, I also had another band called Emmeline. And we kind of had the similar members, but there were some differences. And essentially, there was issues with Sixth Degree, and I eventually split up with them. But then with Emmeline, we kind of kept it going, and we're still going now, and we're going very, very strong, I think, now. But at first, it was just, two of us, and then eventually, over time, it turned to a full band, and honestly, I love it. I love playing with Alley Cat Kings, obviously, but I also love playing with Emmeline. I love playing with both, and I get along well with everyone, really, and I'm so happy and lucky to have both of those bands to this day, because these are the two bands I've been most happy with in my history of being a musician as a whole. So, but on the side of this, there was another band I was in, what was called The Volume. I think we were originally called The Union, but we changed to The Volume. And this band was really, really good as well. I really enjoyed it. But we did eventually. I eventually left the band when I finished my first year of uni, because I felt like I was doing too much band wise, and everything really as a whole felt like it was too much. So I ended up not doing it in the end, which in one way was a shame, but in another way it was actually better for me, mainly because of my mental state. Though I did really enjoy the music we played, and it was the only band I was a drummer in too, so it was slightly different, but I'm happy just playing guitar, because that is my main instrument, more than anything else anyway. But with the bands I'm in at the moment still now is Alley Cat Kings and Emmeline, and these two bands are my main bands. So I love both of them, I love everyone in them. So, to move on, really, I'm basically gonna just put out there that we, Emmeline, are making a EP, acoustic EP, during this. We've been making it during this COVID-19 crisis with the lockdown. So we will be releasing that soon. It's just taken a bit of time, obviously, with all the situations. The recording's been a bit tricky, because everyone has to be doing a part separately in their house and then sending it through files, and then you got to send it to someone to mix and master. So it's a bit of a process, but we will get there eventually. And once it's all ready to be released, which will be very soon, we will it will be out there for everyone to listen to. So just keep an eye out for that one. And thank you to everyone who does end up listening to it. So, to move on from my bands and my history of being a musician, I'm going to talk about music as a whole now, I suppose the best way to put it. So, why should someone play music? Or why do I play music, and how does it relate to everyone else, I suppose, is a good way of putting it. I find music's a very important thing for everyone, because it's a crazy how everyone needs it. Like, if you look in statistically, the two things that everyone desires more than anything else is both sex and music. So I think sex is number one and music's number two. This is an old statistic I heard, so I don't know if that's still true. And I don't know how valid it is, so don't bet me too much on it. But I know it's a big need for everyone. I mean, everyone listening, everyone here has their favourite bands, favourite artists, listens to music on a regular basis. Music's everywhere, you know, it's in our media, it's in every film, it's in, well, apart from silent movies, but in majority of films, and even games, you know, it's in all sorts of video games, and it's everywhere, essentially. We all are consumed in it. So it's a big part of everyone's life. So why do we have it? Well, I say music is important because it heals, in a way. It's the best way I can put it. It creates our own identity, and it heals our emotions, and has it fills up a sense in terms of our senses. If it completely accommodates to one of our most important senses, which is hearing. So to put it in another way, imagine a musician being an emotional healer. So, like, obviously I'm not comparing it to a doctor or nurse, never would do that, but I'm saying imagine a musician a bit like an emotional healer. So someone who is going through a rough time in their life, some traumatic experience has happened to them, whatever is going on, they will listen to music to cope with it. They will listen to their favourite artists, their favourite songs, because they want something to identify with. They want something to purge their emotion. When I mentioned before, when I watched that TV show, Hunter x Hunter, I had the catharsis and purge of emotion, and music does help us with this. It's an art, and it brings it out. It purges it massively. And when you have someone singing, and where vocally the lyrics are really emotional and they really speak to you as a person, and you identify with them, you suddenly don't feel alone in how you feel. And these things are important for people's well-being. That's why music's important. And I feel like this is a very overlooked thing sometimes. People take for granted how much music they have around them and how much it helps them. And I think it'd be great just to really just sit back and think and be mindful about that, you know. How much has this music you've been listening to all your life helped you? But can you remember the first time you heard your song by your favourite band and how amazing you felt and how great it felt? And suddenly realising you're not alone in how you're feeling. It's an amazing feeling. And don't get me wrong, there's other reasons for music as well. If I go into other parts, for example, I think music's very important to personify other mediums, like film and video games, for example, or even theatre, whatever. As a sound engineer or producer, whatever you want to call it, when you're producing sound for a video game or movie or theatre, whatever, you gotta remember it's a difficult job sometimes, because you're making ontological assumptions about your audience in a way, because you have to put yourself into their shoes and know how emotionally they will respond to the visuals which are going on. So it's important to think about that, and as the person's watching these mediums, sometimes the music will make you identify with what's going on. So for example, when I watched the scene that made me cry in Hunter x Hunter, usually a big part to make a scene emotional will be the music, because it adds to the senses. You're not just visually seeing the emotion, but you're hearing the emotion to go with it, and everything's being filled but thanks to that. And without the music, there's sometimes scenes don't have the impact they do. Doesn't it? And obviously when you think about it, even silence in a way is a good tool for musicians to use, and it's important to go with it. So when you watch an emotional scene, sometimes you have this emotional music going, and then suddenly when that person dies, it's kind of building it builds up, really, doesn't it? And then suddenly that person dies, and then the music can just stop, boom, and then that sudden silence of when that person who was dying is dead, it brings in that atmospheric feeling of death. Suddenly you're hearing something, like you got your senses, you're hearing it, but suddenly it's gone. And it really is really impactful. And being a musician, it's not just about using sound, but using silence as a way to create sound. So that's two aspects to music that I think are very, very important. It's both the music as an emotion, musicians and music being an emotional healer, and then going on to the other side of making music and how music is portrayed in all other art forms helps us to be immersed into it, which is very important, and how important it is for someone who makes music to know how the audience you are targeting feels, because you need to think about those types of things, especially if your purpose is to sell it and for people to identify with it. Either way, I've been talking for a while now, so I'm going to leave it to do its thing. So thank you for everyone who does listen to this next episode of my podcast, and I hope I'll see you all on episode 3. Next episode, I'm not too sure what I'm going to be talking about, but it won't be music, of course. So I'll keep you updated on that if I do end up deciding on what I do, or which I'll probably, obviously, of course, I will eventually. So you guys take care of yourself, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me. And I love you all for listening to me, because not only am I helping you, but it helps me that, you know, people out there are listening to my voice. I feel like I'm being heard, and you guys are amazing for that. It really, really helps. So I'll hopefully see you guys next time, and take care of yourself.